Yo, what up? Welcome back to Milkshake Game. You ever wonder what makes a good book? I mean, like a really good book. You can either be talking about one of the great classics, or just a fun read. What is it about a book, or just let's go even broader, a story that keeps you coming back for more, that makes it a lasting classic? You can talk about themes, you can talk about morals, you can talk about philosophy, all that junk. But what time and time again that I've noticed about a story that will always and forever resonate is gonna be the characters. If your book doesn't have characters, it's not gonna leave a lasting impact in my mind. That's not exclusive, right? That's not an end-all be-all statement. Take a story like The Giver, for example. That's got more stuff to think about. More stuff to think about than your average book. But at the same time, what do you remember about The Giver? Is it Jonas? Eh? Jonas, he's kind of just, a median for the reader to explore this interesting setting. Sure, and the setting is interesting and serves as a conversation point for what the book wants to talk about, but do you remember any of the characters in The Giver? You remember The Giver himself? Maybe you remember, the hot redhead friend that he doesn't realize is hot, right? You got that whole thing going on, but do you remember the characters of the story all that well? I don't know. I'm not sure. Versus take another classic pillar of classic literature, To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember Finch just fine. I remember Radley. I remember even Scout, right? And that, of course, that book has got a whole lot to talk about. Everything from not even just racism, but addiction. Oh, what's her name? The old crabby lady. The old crabby addict lady that they help. I forget her name, but I sure remember her. She's a standout. So it all, in my opinion, comes down to characters. If the characters aren't that great, you're probably not going to remember... Oh, well, whatever. You're probably not going to remember everything about a story as well without great, strong characters interacting with an environment in a story that you really care about. Even if it has impressive theming. I'm not discounting The Giver, by the way. I'm saying that the story has such a compelling narrative and morally complex issue to talk about that even with, in my opinion, it's lesser good, interesting characters, that it still shines as a beacon of philosophy or whatever. But so what stories do I respond to? Always, always, always high, really good character stories. Take everything from... Gosh, I don't want to talk about Chilling Reflections again, but let's talk about Forging Hephaestus. Why not? What strong characters am I always going to remember? Take Forging Hephaestus. I'm going to remember Ivan. I'm going to remember Helen. I'm going to remember the fact that I put on a chunky blend milkshake and then overblended it. That's what I'm going to remember. When it comes to maybe more modern classic, take A Long Way from Chicago and A Year Down Yonder. Sure, there's some funny moments in the setting of, Great Depression America, post World War I, before World War II, and then right as World War II breaks out. That era, very classic era that lots of people like to write about. What makes that story so interesting? It's Grandma Dowdle. Dowdle makes that story. She's not the main character, but she's the focus of the story. Joey and Mary Alice might be the two protagonists of their separate books, but it's about Grandma. More Mary Alice in the second one, I would say. More Mary Alice in the second one, but it's Grandma's the focus. And what a memorable, tough old lady. And that's where I think I start noticing my pattern of characters that I'm attracted to. Characters of incredibly strong conviction. A more recent news story that I read, Name of the Wind. I'm not one for fantasy books. It's not really my cup of tea. I read The Hobbit in like middle school, thought it was okay. Tried to read Lord of the Rings later. Eh, and Lord of the Rings is like the peak of the genre. So if I couldn't really get into Lord of the Rings, stuff like The Sorcerer's Apprentice, what chance is that going to ever have to capture my fancy, right? Yeah, not really my speed of storytelling. I can appreciate the Lord of the Rings for what it is. Imagine like constructing like several languages just to make your world fleshed out. Just the ability to come up with all these races and languages and cultures and like keep them consistent and fleshed out, like that's crazy good. That's like crazy awesome. But like the actual narrative storytelling, it's not really my cup of tea. The characters are good, strong characters, right? But the books themselves, not exactly my speed. But Name of the Wind? There we go. That's more my speed. What has it got that Lord of the Rings and other fantasy novels has? It's got one, it's not so black and white. It's not so dry, I mean. First of all, that's the actual killer there. It's not as dry. But what does it have? Kvolth. Kvolth as a main character, I feel like a lot of book series, you make your main character too generic. It's fine so you can sell millions of copies. But when you take a risk on a main character like Kvolth, that can really pay dividends with a certain select group of people. Kvolth is not a good guy. He's not a bad guy, but he sure isn't a good guy. I feel like what a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, and even like anime and TV shows fall into the trap of is when you spend your time explaining your magic or science system. A lot of them do a very poor job of integrating it in a functioning way into your narrative, right? Like, even a good anime like Hunter x Hunter, like, the Heaven's Arena arc is kind of... It gets dragged down by how long they, basically sit in a classroom and explain to you how the magic of this world works, how Nen works. And, on rewatch, I haven't actually rewatched Hunter x Hunter in a while, but I'd be sorely tempted to skip through that part because it's boring. Sure, the first time I watched it, fine, I needed it explained to me, but it's not narratively interesting in the moment. They're just sitting around getting explained. Versus Name of the Wind, they slowly breadcrumb in how the magic system works for the first chunk of it. It's about much as a mystery to Kvolth as it is the reader. But in their world, it's like a science, right? Like, you go to the university for engineering, you go to the university for math, history, whatever. It's like a STEM field in their world, right? They got it down to a science, and they call it sympathy because, you can't call it magic. It has, not dragons, not demons, and not magic, right? Sympathy. But anyway, instead of sitting down and just spoon feeding the exposition into your mouth because you can't think of an actual good way to fit your explanation of how the mechanics of your world works to the reader, it instead sets it up very well. Kvolth, of course he's a prodigy, why not? Every story I read ever, the main character's a prodigy in some way. Anyway, he's a prodigy, obviously. So when he comes to the university, he's too advanced for the entry-level classes. He gets into a bit of a spat with the professor, who doesn't like him. Naturally, there has to be friction from the get-go. So the instructor sets him up. Oh yeah, sure, I'll give you a test that, if you pass, you can skip out of my class. Meanwhile, he's thinking, I'm gonna totally set this kid up for failure. Anyway, so you have this situation where Kvolth wants to get out of the entry-level classes because he doesn't want to waste his time. But the professor sets him up to actually teach the introductory lessons to the other students. And Kvolth, a very trickster guy, You know, he has more in common with, like, Loki and Coyote and the various trickster gods than he does, like, your regular generic spell-slinging rogue sorcerer that you would find. Um, he knows how to do a trick or two. He rolls with the punches here very well. He teaches the class. It's a very humorous scene, and you know this whole thing is gonna backfire some way. Like, Kavoth is he's gonna get it somehow. But by the end, he sort of outfoxes the professor. He burns him in front of, like, the entire student body, gets in serious trouble over the issue, but he's able to present it in a way that he still gets punished, like he gets, lashed in the public court or whatever, in the public town square or whatever, but he's still able to not only stay in the school without getting expelled, he's also able to advance to the next level. And he'll take some lashings for that. Especially compared to the other mamby-pamby rich boys and girls that are in the school. He's like, yeah, sure, dude. I'll take some lashings just for this. Like, and he's struggling the whole time. So yeah, Kavoth, they explain the magic system in a way that isn't just spoon-feeding the information. They wove it in very much narratively in. Very nice. People need to do that. Don't make me sit there and watch in the most boring way possible you explain your magic or science system. Like, sci-fi also, I feel like, falls in this camp. I don't need world's most driest explanation about... Sorry, I checked the recording. I was suddenly worried I wasn't recording. World's most driest explanation about the newest space laser that's supposed to make me cream in my pants, when it's like, dude, I don't care about the space laser. Tell me why the space laser is important, what the characters are going to do, what, obstacles this brings. If the details of how it works are important, can you at least do it in an interesting way? Nope. Nope, we're not going to weave it into the story. We're just going to dump it on top of your head. Enjoy it, idiot. So yeah, I feel like sci-fi also can be guilty of this, which is a no-no for me. But yeah, back to Kavoth. Characters with conviction. He has his personal convictions, and you will you will know them. And I think about other characters with strong convictions from stories that have stuck out to me. Think, Ender, of course. A lot of the Ender's characters have strong convictions, right? Like, you got Novinia, you got, hang on, you got Valentine, Peter. Like, all the characters that are, like, in the central point of the conflict. Especially in Speaker, like, the background stuff, like, the story is really just, an excuse for these characters to get their principles in line with, the limited action there is. Especially compared to Ender's Game, like, Speaker is a much slower story, but slower is fine. The stakes are just as high as they ever were. It's not a narrative that, who shoots and who, beats who is going to solve the answer. It's going to be people talking to each other, convincing each other that this way is the right way. A battle of morality, not a battle of space lasers in space. Other strong characters. Where was I going with this? I'm thinking of consistent characters. Forging Hephaestus, Chilling Reflections, like Ivan and Helen, Fornax and Lodestar, not exactly the most morally complicated people. But at the same time, with all the crazy shenanigans that are happening in their world... Did I set the timer? I did set the timer. Seeing how these characters, are forced to keep in line with their morality, how inflexible they are on certain points, how consistent they are, is just truly impressive and sticks in your mind. So, like, even when you go to the point where you make Santa Claus real in your story, just so you can have your Superman get into an argument about why it isn't good to exclude all the bad children from getting presents every year. You know you've written a consistently well character that Lodestar has a problem with the way Santa Claus runs Christmas. And it's like, yeah, you true superhero. Like, dude, I knew Lodestar was serious business. Like, how many times have you ever heard, like, the superhero or the good guy trying to convert the villain into, a good guy? And yet, when Lodestar does it to Tori in book 2, she gives her the "we could use someone like you at the Alliance of Heroic Champions" speech. It still floors you. It's still, like, you see it all the time in those sort of stories where the good guys try to make the bad guys good. Like, it's not an uncommon thing at all. And yet, when Lodestar does it to Thorley, you're just floored. That was the moment I knew that Lodestar was way more scary. Not just because she's basically Superman, right? And will win and save the day and is impossibly strong and powerful and all that jazz. So you should be scared. If there was a being as powerful as Superman or Lodestar in real life, you should be scared of that. But scared in a different way when you knew the conviction of that character. Like, oh, okay, you are, like, serious business. Got it. What a scary individual. Even in, like, children's stories, right? Going back to, here we go again, talking about Gregor the Overlander. Yep, here I go again, talking about Gregor the Overlander. Gregor himself, doesn't start the story too convicted, confused, scared child in a strange circumstance in a young adult novel. But, you got Rip Red, the most interesting, morally complicated character that I can think of in a children's story. Ender's Game is not a children's story. I'm talking about actual children's novels. Gregor the Overlander, great series. Handling such wonderful child-friendly subjects as, child soldiers, war, genocide, PTSD, race wars, all that good stuff. Biological warfare. But it is the characters of convictions that stick out to me. Rip Red, Vicus, Solivet even. Even though, you don't have to like them for you to enjoy the character. Take Jane from Speaker for the Dead. I don't like Jane. I also don't sympathize with her. Solivet, as a character, I would not like Solivet. In real life, Solivet would be a very scary woman to be around. Don't agree with her philosophy. Don't agree with the things that she wants to keep, the wars going, keeping humanity on top or whatever at the cost of how many lives? Just keeping warfare going on eternally. Jane, it's harder to sympathize with, but, she's an alien. She's a rogue AI. Hard to sympathize with that. But I can at least like Solivet as a character in a story because, she is morally complicated. Versus Jane, morally complicated, represents an interesting facet of, philosophical discussion. When she opens her mouth in the book, less interested. Anyway, yeah, Vicus. Even Luxa, right? Luxa gets a lot out of her conversations with Hamnet in that story. We are not sending that out. Excuse you. That is a small, as well as I missed the timing. Anyway, I think I put it as a large first. Sometimes I see the chunky or the smooth blend, and my brain goes, that's a large, and I make it a large cup. And I only catch it later. Luxa has really incredibly strong convictions at the start in one way. She's just as convicted as a person. Her personality doesn't change. She's just as stubborn and obstinate, but she's given fresh perspective over her interaction with the other characters. She's not going to, you know, kill everyone that's against her anymore. She's much more willing to go, you know, with peace. Good, right? That is correct. That's what you want out of your world leaders. Let's try to stay away from that topic. This video is recorded before the election results, so let's just skate on by that topic. Here's hoping... never mind. Here's hoping. Anyway. No. Think about books. Don't think about the election. Nobody wants to think about politics anymore. That's why... Never mind. Don't stop. Just think about another story you want to talk about, like Jane Eyre. What a strange book for me to have latched upon. A story like Airborne that I read when growing up. Sure, Matt is a very convicted character in his own way. It's hard not to root for a guy like Matt Cruz. Every page he tells you how much he loves flying on his airship. Hooray! You know, good old hard-working American in the Gilded Age. Oh boy, I love child labor laws during the Gilded Age. The child labor laws during the Gilded Age aside, 12-year-old, you know, working on an airship, very safe job. OSHA definitely exists. Besides that, you want to root for Matt. He's, you know, he's got his whole baggage, you know, dealing with loss and getting passed up. And you got Kate over there, right? I'll remember Kate and Matt Cruz till my dying days. Interesting, consistently characters of strong conviction doing their thing in a story. I'll even remember Spearglass by process of being associated, especially with great character foil moments of, like when Matt drops the pirates off the ship and he goes, "I didn't want to do it," right? Oh, he exactly mirrors Spearglass's words. Why can't I remember it? But I had no choice. Yeah, I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice. The same as Spearglass says when he shoots the wireless officer in the head. Obviously didn't have to do that. But, you know, he's a bad guy who thinks he has to defend his home. You know, so pillaging and murder, that's the way to do it. He's a pirate. Pirates do that. I'm glad they didn't go with the army landlubbers. I am a pirate. Yar har har har. They went with like, no, he's like a pirate. Like, he will loot and plunder and kill you for your stuff. And then, you know, if you're a problem, you die. Like, he's a frickin' pirate. They're not yo-ho, actually. Anyway, I did like that about the pirates in that story. I mean, okay, Crumlin is kind of yo-ho, but he will shoot you too. You will be murdered. It is scary. But yeah, Spearglass as a foil to Matt, pretty good. Defending their homes, just in completely different ways. Pretty good stuff. Jane Eyre. Yes, Jane. A different Jane. Better Jane. Way better Jane. Of all the stories for me to respond to, why Jane Eyre? Why did that become one of my favorite books? Well, I'm glad you asked. Nobody. Very glad you asked. Let me tell you. Again, I think it's just, one, it's a great story with strong characters, right? I'll remember Jane. I'll remember Rochester. I'll even remember St. John Rivers. Also, if you ever look up how to spell St. John Rivers, you're wrong. You are incorrect. I listened to the audio book version first of Jane Eyre, and every single time I saw St. John's name spelled, I was like, what? That's how you spell it? Dude, people who lived hundreds of years ago, what were you smoking? Why would I look at a name that is St.John and think anything except St. John? Why is this dude's name St. John? As like a first name? Okay, sure. I would not in a million years think Sen'jin. When I think Sen'jin, I think Sen'jin like Shieldmaster from WoW. My Hearthstone. I've never played WoW. I played Hearthstone back in the day. When I hear Sen'jin, I think Sen'jin Shieldmaster from Hearthstone. I do not think Saint John, dude who wrote the fourth gospel of the Bible, that's not who I think of. At all. Anyway, Senjin over there. Anyway, so what's Jane got going on that makes her so special? Another character of complete conviction, especially in a situation where she's powerless, like at every turn. Like in her growing up, powerless. It would be wise to take this sort of course of action. Nope, doesn't do it. Even when she'd be better off doing this. When she moves out to school, things are fine. You know, she's in an environment where her personality's okay. Then she goes out to, Rochester. And that whole chapter of her life starts. And when she almost gets married, and then, the truth comes out. How easy it would have been to be a mistress? Nope. I will, who in the world cares for you when she's having that moment of, like, trying to figure out what she should do in that situation? Run away to France with Rochester? Leave his wife behind in England, go to France. And she's like, oh, and she's having that moral struggle with herself. And of course, divorce doesn't exist, right? Divorce isn't an option. This is an old book. People don't get divorces yet. Obviously, this would be the answer in the modern day. If you accidentally end up in an extremely terrible, bad marriage with an insane person, you would just, divorce and then problem solved. Nope, it's an old book. Divorce, that's not the answer. Anyway. People don't get divorces. What is this? Henry has had his say, but he's a king. Rochester is just a noble guy. When you're a noble guy, you don't get divorces. When you're a king, yes, you can do that. Anyway. Right, actually, Henry VIII certainly has happened. Yeah. Yeah, Jane Eyre isn't that old. Right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking now, but I'm like, pretty sure the Anglican Church doesn't exist yet. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. Oops. Okay, every time I accidentally bump my microphone, I have to check to make sure everything still works. You know how many videos I've ruined by not doing that? Checking to see. Anyway, her conviction carries her through that crisis, as it does every crisis that she encounters over the course of the story. And, right, and the line that stuck out to me. Let me finish it, Who in the world cares for you? I care for myself, and that's enough, right? How easy it would have been to, succumb to the pressures from, her own desires and that of Rochester's, and she goes, boom, nope. I have too much self-respect. I'm not doing it. Even if I end up a starving beggar in the street, nah. Nope. Not gonna do it. And of course things, of course, it has a happy ending. It's gotta have a happy ending. Of course she ends up marrying Rochester anyway, by the end of the book. You get to have your cake and eat it too. Well, to be fair, she does go through more trials, right? With Senjin, almost getting convinced to be a missionary's wife and then leaving. And again, still sticking to her guns. Very admirable. So in the face of social pressures, lower class, stay in your lane. No, I'm not staying in my lane. Staying in my lane is for losers, actually. I will ignore the lower social class system. I will ignore the fact that I am a woman, and I will do what I will want. And I'll even ignore the fact that you're, pressuring me into doing, an illegal marriage. I'll ignore the fact that you're trying to pull the religion card. It's what God wants me to do. Not the God I believe in, actually. I think we've read the same Bible, and I've arrived at different conclusions than you, sir. I've come to different conclusions than you, sir. It's a good story. And then, having a happy enough ending is, the cherry on top. Anyway, was it talking about characters with strong convictions? and magic systems and all. Dude, I'm all over the place with my discussions about what makes a good book. Because I've been stuck on characters. Like a specific subset of characters that appeal to me. What are other characters, consistently written characters of conviction that stick out in my mind? When I just gaze around for books that have always stuck out to me. Okay, sorry, I can't read anymore. I just kept looking at the rose. That's not rose hip whip, whatever that is. And just stun-locked my brain into just checking the special over and over again. Okay, my brain is still stuck on Forging Hephaestus, Villain's Code in general, because I finally got my wife to read book 2. She read book 1 a long time ago, and finally got her to start reading book 2. So, of course, me being me, I can't just leave her alone. Every time that, I see her, it's like, okay, so where are you now? It's like, I can't just leave her alone. I gotta get the play-by-play. Which is fine, because she's really enjoying the book, so she doesn't mind hashing out the things that she's learned and, tossing out theories. Because even though I'm caught up, I've read book 1, 2, 2.5, and 3, like, I'm all caught up with the series, but there's still tons of mysteries I don't know. And I don't mind saying, yeah, I'm all caught up and I still have no idea. Let's theorize together is perfectly fine in my eyes. It's like, yeah, you learn nothing more about this particular issue. Like Quorum. Yep. After that one conversation that Lodestar and Quorum have in book 2, yep, that's kind of all the growth or all the clues we get about Quorum for the rest of the series. Sorry. Or, the nature of Nexus. Mr. Kaleidoscope Eyes Man. Hive mind across the multiverse, causes mischief to entertain himself guy. Classic. Yeah, no idea what's going on with him, really. That's fine. Hello, Quinn. Is it really Easter? I haven't been paying attention at all. How many Easter-related milkshakes have I made, and I haven't noticed it's Easter? The words Easter were in front of my brain when the season changed. And I still didn't process the information? Dude, listen, I'm just making milkshakes. And I don't even care if I don't make them perfect either. They just get to eat it. So, we're talking about great versus all-time hit classic stories, right? No, we were just talking about entertaining stories. Right, that's what I was gonna cut back to. Stories that stick out to me. Like Poirot. Take Poirot, for example. Specific books, the ones that will stick out to me are the ones with great twists, good characters, besides Poirot himself. Because Poirot is a wonderfully little, clever, well-written, consistent character across a multitude of books. What are the specific books that stick out to me forever? It's gotta be The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's gotta be 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe. And it's gonna be The Hollow. Why? Well, in order of operation. Murder of Roger Ackroyd, let's just get it out of the way. It's the first one I read. But it's still... John and his sister are still standout characters. What's her name? Caroline. There we go. Caroline Shepherd. Spinster. Mooching off your doctor brother. But like John Shepherd, not from Stargate Atlantis, different John Shepherd. John Shepherd from Murder of Roger Ackroyd and his sister. Well-written pair. On top of Poirot. The rest of the gang in that story, whatever. They're the same faces, just in different shapes that you see all over the place in Agatha Christie novels. Nothing particular interesting going on there. I think except for Shepherd and his sister. But the twist is pretty legendary. Like, when you look up what's the best Poirot novel online, Ackroyd makes its way to the top for a reason. It's a legendary twist that few see coming. That's why Ackroyd sticks out. What about the other two I mentioned? The Hollow. I've read all the Poirot novels, and the rogue gallery that she assembles for this story sticks out. Poirot isn't that much in it. It's more focusing on another John. Another doctor named John. Sorry, I don't make the rules. It's a common name, and she loves doctors. Is there a single Agatha Christie novel that doesn't feature at least like 2 or 3 doctors? Sorry. Them's the breaks. And I don't remember his last name, so I can't distinguish this John from the other John. They're both doctors, and their name is John. Sorry. But the John and Gerda, like, dude. And the artist gal, oh gosh, what is her name? The mistress, John's mistress, the artist gal. Like, what a kooky cast of characters. And by kooky, I mean completely morally depressing. Her ability in that book, a lot of people talk about her characterization, and, it's fine. Like, the stories are more interesting for the twists and the mystery aspect of her being, a really good mystery novelist. But in The Hollow specifically, I think she does a great job of creating a character that, even if I've never been able to sympathize with somebody like Gerda in my life, just in a couple paragraphs, I'm like on board with what this woman is going through in her life. Like, being able to reduce someone's problems and their lives, their whole personality and issues, down to a single piece of cooling roast on a table that you're indecisive about. Like, dang. You're cooking in this story. And the twist is good. And the twist is good in The Hollow. Not as much Poirot as I like in my Poirot stories, but we'll make an exception here with The Hollow. 1-2 Buckle My Shoe. Over to 1-2 Buckle My Shoe. There's only really one character besides Poirot himself that isn't just, the usual bunch. And it's the murderer. Right? The murderer always is interesting, right? That's where if there is any moral complexity to be had in a mystery novel, it's gonna be what the murderer is thinking. And I think 1-2 Buckle My Shoe is probably, like, aside from the obvious that, murder is bad, power corrupts, money corrupts, the pretty common themes that you would encounter as motivation for most murderers. 1-2 Buckle My Shoe it's a little different. There's literally no way to talk about the murderer's, like, motives without spoiling the entire thing. But let's just put it this way. There's a reason why an alternative title for the story to 1-2 Buckle My Shoe is The Patriotic Murders. Right? There's a reason why that's one of the alternative titles to the book. It's really good. Like, the philosophical debate present there at the end when Poirot and the murderer are having it out, it's like, ooh. That is how you encapsulate the conviction of a character in one glorious scene. Like, yeah. Murder is pretty awful. Like, you get dragged down when you read stories. Characters die, characters go. You play video games, people die. Watch movies, whatever. It's easy to get desensitized, and then you take a step back and you get hit with a book that actually, like, makes you think characters as people. Like The Hollow, or even, not 1-2 Buckle My Shoe, but at least the murderer as, like, a person. I'm thinking, like, honestly, like, Undertale. Like, the character writing in Undertale is so fantastic. Like, I have never and will never complete an Undertale genocide run not because I couldn't do it. Like, Sans and Undyne, whatever. I could accomplish that. I'd bang my head against the wall. I'd get there, right? I can do that. That is within my skill set as a gamer. Killing Papyrus on purpose. Not so much. Don't think I could ever do that. right? Maybe I'm just, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm just more sensitive to media. Like, I was in a funk to the ending of, like, Yume Nikki for, like, a week. Like, I didn't see that coming. Spoilers for Yume Nikki. When this character, there's not a single line of dialogue in this game, just environmental storytelling. Like, the whole game's art style and direction is just like some Japanese dude's vent art that he put into a game. And all this stuff that gets you thinking a certain way, and then you assemble all the effects, drop them in the room, wake up into the real world, and bam. I was in a funk for a while. Maybe media just hits me, maybe I'm just more affected. Because I don't know. I don't know, man. I see some people play stuff and they're just like, whatever. They watch a movie, read a book, they're like, yeah, I mean, it was good. And I'm like, you didn't cry? Like, I don't cry for movies, but I've cried for some books in my day. Let me tell you. There's still, like, some parts. How many times have I read Gregor and the Prophecy of Bane? And, like, there's still this chunk where I'm still like, oh gosh, I can't believe it. I'm gonna cry. Or other parts in Jane Eyre, like towards the end. There's one line where, oh, what is it? She kept all these things and pondered it in her heart. Just straight up, like, ugh. If that doesn't mean anything to you, you know, that's fine. Out of context. Especially if you're not biblically literate, then that might make no sense. But that's a good moment to get the old teardrops running. Anyway, what was I talking about? Books. What else? I was talking about Poirot. I was done talking about Poirot. Maybe I'm just done talking. How long have I been playing? 41 minutes? Dude, that's a long time just to ramble about books. Anyway, don't waste your time getting fussed about the details about how the mechanic of your world works. I don't want to sit there and read a bunch of stuff I don't care about when I could be having awesome character moments. Also, it's a perfect day. Oh, Steam screenshot! I was too late. Well, that's another late screenshot for the Steam screenshot folder that I will know means it was a perfect day. Even though it's no actual evidence whatsoever. That's okay. Yeah, don't waste my time explaining how your light speed travel works, how, you know, oh, the reason why this character couldn't bust out this move in this situation is because I don't care. Explain it to me in an interesting narrative way when other stuff is happening. Don't waste my time. Give me cool character moments instead. Expand the world building at the same time as explaining it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't gotten anything out of this video, go read Forging Hephaestus by Drew Hayes. Or or Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. Also, don't worry that it's by Orson Scott Card. People are allowed to make great works of art while being scumbag human beings. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Just read Speaker for the Dead and Ender's Game, and just don't acknowledge anything else that he's ever done in his life. Easy. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright, anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.